Okay, let's get straight to Senator Hollie Hughes, Senator for New South Wales from the Liberal Party. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chris.
How are you?
I'm very well. I am looking forward to Christmas.
Already, you sent me a message today trying to work out exactly when you were going to have time off. Is it like that? Do you get to about the third week in November and think, where is the finishing line?
Well, I was actually thinking about it this morning. This feels like an election year. Like it's, those years that are just big years and sort of really have a lot packed into them. And I guess really that was the referendum as opposed to it being a general election that we had this year. So, and the last two, so we've just had 2 sitting weeks, Senate only, and then a joint sitting week. And then we've got another 2 coming up. And, the government has no agenda whatsoever. They're just completely out of control. So it's just, I think everyone's looking forward to just a bit of a finishing line.
Yeah, let's talk about how much the government has not paid attention to the things that matter. Home prices could plummet by 10% in Australia, we read today, if a nightmare scenario unfolds between now and the end of next year, and it's more likely than unlikely. According to SQM research, continued interest rate rises, record immigration, growing employment, and an oil price shock could send prices crashing next year. Do you even think the federal Labor government understands how this works?
I don't think they've got any clue how any of this works. They seem to have no comprehension whatsoever when it comes to looking at fiscal policy and what they need to do to try and rein in inflation, because that is really the biggest issue underlying the economy at the moment. And that's what is just, one of the major factors into this current cost of living crisis. But if you listen to any of those in the government, they'll tell you everything's great. They've got this 10-point plan that they're working through and everything's fantastic. And, if I hear cheaper childcare once more, and a boost to bulk billing. Well, I mean, I'm still yet to find anyone who can find a bulk billing doctor. They may have increased the Medicare rebate, which they would have hoped would have led to an increase in bulk billing. But doctors everywhere are saying, nowhere near enough. We're still going to have a gap payment. So I think they are completely deluded. They don't understand that they need to stop spending. Yeah. They need to curb this massive immigration that they've got going on at the moment. All of that is putting continuing pressure on housing prices, on housing availability, and keeping that inflation at record highs, which is then, in turn, pushing onto the housing market through mortgages. So
and mortgage owners need to understand that although they're the ones being screwed here, it's the government that should be screwed in terms of their spending.
Oh, absolutely. And this, it's people with a mortgage, whether it's for their own home or for an investment property, that are being punished here.
Yeah.
And when you think about those that have it for an investment property, they are quite often what the renters are using, and so that is then pushing up rent. So you've got 2/3 of the Australian marketplace either live in their own home or rent a home, and both of them are being squeezed because of these mortgage rate increases. And the sad thing is, it looks like there's another one on the way. It is making such a big impact, and it's making an impact everywhere. Yeah. There are very few areas that are being excluded that aren't feeling this cost of living crisis, that is really of the making of this Labor government.
All right, let's go to the former Labor Minister for Hookers, one of Labor's favourite unionists, Craig Thompson, the former member for Doe Bell, who we can't possibly forget him. He's pleaded guilty to rorting a whole raft of government grants. Look, I know we all make mistakes, and I know sometimes we get into all sorts of problems, but I actually think that you are more responsible for those problems when you premeditate them, Hollie.
Well, it's like he's had this, the snout in the trough, and he just doesn't quite know how to extract himself from it. It's like, most people get a job and earn money and pay their bills rather than looking for a way to rort their way around the system. I mean, this just seems to be something problematic for this guy across the board. It's just one instance after another.
He's a shocker. Now, I dare not even try to explain where the Brittany Higgins Parliament House rape allegations are up to, but I keep telling my audience right around the globe exactly where we're up to. I'm kind of getting confused myself. Apart from a trial, which fell over, a massive payout handed to the alleged victim, an inquiry which nailed the prosecutor more than the accused, and a number of defamation and cross-defamation cases. The acquitted man, Bruce Lehrman, is also suing Channel 10. Does that about sum it up?
Oh, yeah, it's about there. There's a few other little elements you could probably throw in as well. But, this defamation case against Channel 10, I think, could be really interesting as it plays out, because I feel that this will be almost a de facto criminal trial, in the sense that we didn't get a conclusion in the criminal trial, and the same evidentiary rules don't apply in defamation. So the fact that Channel 10 is using the truth defence, they're going to have to prove that. So it's going to be really interesting. Apparently both Mr. Lehrman's apparently on the stand right now, but Miss Higgins will actually also be required to give evidence. So it will be interesting to see how this will unfold as the evidence is given. Be interesting to see whether or not people actually turn up, or we have all of a sudden mental health episodes or whatever that precludes them from participating. But, the questions that will be asked, and I think need to be answered, around an awful lot of inconsistency around Ms. Higgins' claims that were brought up both at the criminal trial and then further exposed during the inquiry around it. So, hopefully at some point there can be some sort of clarity as to maybe what really did go on.
All right. You do a lot of work in the autism space. Now we understand that under the NDIS, a diagnosis of autism alone won't get you access to the National Disability Insurance Scheme. It's one of the cuts coming in trying to streamline the NDIS. I understand how important streamlining it is. But, Hollie, has Minister Bill Shorten cut in the wrong place?
Look, this is a plan to have a look at it. Again, this is a government not doing anything. They're talking about having a look at this is maybe one
Shorten's
area.
a classic for doing and saying this stuff, isn't he?
Look, it's unbelievable. Look, I have an autistic son. He was diagnosed when he was 2. As I like to say, we're not dipping our toe. We're swimming in the deep end of autism. His classical autism, with a series of other diagnoses that go with that. The fact of the matter is, ever since the DSM-5, and this gets a bit technical, but this is sort of the book that defines medical conditions, it changed and it got rid of a whole lot of conditions that previously existed: global developmental delay, Asperger's, pervasive developmental delay, amongst many, many others, and bundled them all into autism level 1, level 2, level 3. And level 3 is at the most severe end. Level 2 is sort of the midstream, where you might have some communication but need some assistance. There'll be some challenges, but you're not at that very severe end of autism that is usually accompanied with an intellectual disability as well. And level 1 was really to cover all of these diagnoses that they got rid of. And these were things that would never have been considered permanent and lifelong disabilities. Yet we know that a lot of people are being diagnosed with autism level 2 and up to access the NDIS. Now, that shouldn't be happening, but it's happening because the state governments vacated the field when the NDIS came in. So if you need a bit of support through community health for an OT or a speech therapist, that has gone. The state governments are not supplying enough aids and supports in the classrooms that they should be providing. So parents are desperate to get help. But I actually do think this is the right area to be starting in. But it'll be interesting to see how they do it. There's a lot of ways you can look at it. I was talking to an OT yesterday, and she was telling me about the people that come in and ask for things to go into reports so they can access NDIS funding for them. And it's just wrong. Families, she might say to them, look, swimming lessons would be good, or swimming would be good, whatever it might be to help build up gross motor skills. And the parent's like, well, can you put it in a report so I can get it under the NDIS? And it's like, no, and she's one of those good ones that won't do it. But, parents do shop around to get these things. That is a problem. It's taxpayers' money. It's there for people who need it. And I actually think it's an abuse of the system. And there seems to have been, since the NDIS came in too, and this is no doubt going to win me a lot of friends, but a lot of parents now seem to think that if their kids need a bit of assistance somewhere or they need to do anything, that someone else should pay for it. You've got kids. I've got 3. I've got 1 with autism, but I've got 2 without, anything else diagnostically. And kids cost money. Kids need stuff all the time, and that's just the reality. And this is where state governments have really lost people, let people down, because instead of having access to those community health services, they've just rolled them back to being non-existent. And so families are having to go to private providers, which are more expensive, long waitlist times. And so they are looking for assistance in getting access to those services. So there's a lot of complexity to it. I don't think it's a bad area to start looking at, because I do think the diagnostic levels are wrong. I don't think it's actually a bit demeaning to people who have that classical autism, who have that more serious form of autism that requires substantial lifelong supports, because, a lot of people then see kids who don't have autism, who don't have the challenges that these people do, and it diminishes their experiences and the supports that they need. So, I would be quite happy to see something happen at that end. But yet again, I don't think the Labor government will do anything, because someone will say to them, oh, you know what, we promised the disability community that we wouldn't do anything to upset them, and there's that many votes in the space, so we're not actually going to do anything.
That wouldn't surprise me.
So I think they can talk about it. They'll put these scary things out, and all it does is upset parents, scare them, especially those that do genuinely need the help.
One last one. Your party's vacant Senate seat is a curious thing. The departure of former Foreign Minister Marise Payne. It's led to a scramble for this coveted seat. Are you about to hand it to former New South Wales Transport Minister Andrew Constance? Really?
Well, look, Chris, I am not a selector in this. I have taken a very active stance of being.
Is there a committee of selectors like a cricket team?
Look, there's about 750 people who will select this person, and I'm back up for pre-selection next year. So these same people will determine where I am on the ticket next year. Because, look, quite honestly, because the person that is selected by the Liberal Party members will be a colleague of mine. I'm, not actively out there pushing one way or the other. If you talk to 3 people, you get 4 versions of who's going to win. So, look, I got to say, it is a bit unusual that I really don't have an idea who's going to win. There's certainly a lot of people pushing Andrew Constance, but there's a lot of people pushing others in the race as well. Basically, I'm the only non-moderate senator in the Senate and the New South Wales team at the moment. I'm the only one from the Conservative team. So there is a lot of people pushing to have someone more conservative join the New South Wales Senate team. So we will know on Sunday.
All right. We'll be watching that space very intently. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you can choose your holidays fairly and squarely and just tick them all. Tick every one of the days.
Just trying to work in with you, Smithy.
Good on you, Hollie. Thank you very much.
All right. Speak to you soon.
Good on you. Senator for New South Wales from the Liberal Party of Australia, Senator Hollie Hughes.